Tyson Chartier, the head coach, the head honcho of the New England Cartel and New England MMA more generally with all of his fighters he's got signed. Tyce, good to catch up, man. How are things?
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Things are going well. The Red Sox doing well in the ALCS, so things are good over here. We just need the Patriots to do well today.
Listen, that's right over my head. I don't know anything about that. I do remember getting a lot of criticism. I remember when I spoke with Calvin, I'm mentioning the Liverpool FC, our football team, and Boston Red Sox are owned by the same company. I remember getting loads of messages saying that will go right over Calvin's head. Calvin's not a baseball guy. So.
Yeah, he follows the Boston sports, but Rob's more of a baseball fan than Calvin is. Calvin's a big Patriots fan.
Yeah. I want to talk about both guys individually, but let's go in chronological order if you like, because Rob's been more active. He's coming off the great win over Garbrandt, and now he's booked against Aldo. Opinion. I know you've been doing your tape study because I can see that on your Instagram stories, but opinions on what is probably Rob's biggest fight of his career?
Yeah, I think it's an exciting fight. You know, you grow up watching the sport, and Jose Aldo's a legend. I don't think he's a future Hall of Famer, obviously former champion. One of the most. He was at one point. It was kind of an argument of who's the scarier guy, him or Anderson Silva.
Yeah.
And he's still plugging along, and I think this is a really cool one from like a nostalgic standpoint. Growing up, like before I ever had my first fight, I was watching Jose Aldo fight. So now to sit down, watch video, and try to prepare Rob to compete with a guy like that, it's pretty surreal, but at the same time it's like exciting because it's a good challenge. And I think it's a good time to be Rob Font, with the win streak and how well he's looked. And I think we're catching Jose Aldo at a good time where he's not washed up by any means, but I don't think he's necessarily as dangerous as when he was making that big run at 145 earlier, coming out of WEC and stuff. So I think it's a really exciting fight. I think it's also a good fight to kind of put Rob on the map. I think we beat Cody Garbrandt, he beat Moraes, all that, and people have had excuses for every fight, but you go and beat someone like Jose Aldo, and that's your 5th win in a row. People can't deny that you're 100% a prospect at that point.
Yeah. So I wouldn't even. I think a prospect would be putting it lightly. I think he's
contender. Sorry.
Yeah, to go on that win run, and that's what I wanted to ask is we've got Pettis, Ricky Simone, Moraes, and then Garbrandt. Out of this 4-fight win streak, whose style do you think is most similar to Aldo's? Is there someone who's you can model this game on?
I would think, like, if you're just looking from those guys, I think you look at Moraes. He's a dynamic striker. He's really good with the leg kicks. He hits like a truck. He's strong and he's super athletic. But he's also shown some cardio issues in the past, and so I think similar background to Aldo, where he obviously super dynamic and athletic, very strong, great takedown defense, but has shown issues with cardio as well. So I think similar, those guys, it's kind of a similar thing. I think they're both at different points in their career, though. I think, Moraes is a little bit on the decline, so it seems, but still, very dangerous nonetheless, going against a guy like that. It's, he can put you out with his feet, he can put you out with his hands, he can put you out with his knees. And then he's obviously a physical specimen too. So I think there's a lot of similarities there. Obviously Aldo's a little bigger, but yeah, I think, sort of similar stylistically and background to Marlon Moraes.
Yeah. Rob's now crossed over, if you think about it. He's now went from his first main event to back-to-back fights headlining. Do you think there's a specific reason why he's now getting these headlining spots, other than the win streak and other than the performances he's put together?
I think it's weird because you got to think there's been a rub from Calvin. Calvin getting these main event spots while Rob was injured, and him being on the win streak, that he's on, and then seeing Calvin in the main events, which puts the team in the main events, which kind of just puts the subliminally out there in the matchmakers' heads of like, okay, well, these guys are headlining cards, why can't Rob? I got to think that's had something to play with it. But ultimately, it is that win streak and then Rob's performance, and him going and beating Marlon like he did. that puts him in that contender conversation. So now they're like, okay, let's test him in a 5 rounds. Because, ideally, these people, before they get their title shots, they do like to see them in 5-round fights to kind of see how they fare. Because last thing you want to do is put this killer in a 5-round fight, and then you realize he's only got 2-round cardio, and it makes for either a boring fight or you just, kind of just wiped out a contender. So I think they like to see if they're ready. So I think he was at that point. It was like it was a perfect storm. You see him cornering for main events with Calvin. You see our team doing well, and then you see him beat Moraes like he did. It made sense to go for a 5-round fight next. And then you see how he performed in 5 rounds. So that warrants, okay, he's a contender, he's a 5-round fighter, and he's a headliner now. So bring in, Jose Aldo in a 5-round.
It's been a big 12 months, a really big 12 months for Rob. And I think if memory serves, when he was booked against Moraes, he was number 11 or number 12 in the bantamweight division. And Moraes was obviously number 3, so he got the massive push as well. He seemed to be was on the fringes in the top 15, and then he was catapulted right to the top 5, which has then given the opportunity with Garbrandt and now Aldo. It's great to see where he is, because as you know how much respect I've got for you and for all of you, and Rob's just a class act.
Yeah, it was cool, seeing Rob come off the first major injury of his career, rehabbing like a professional, and then coming back, like you said, at number 10 or 11 or whatever it was, and then fighting the number 3 guy who at the time was still one of the scariest strikers in the division. I mean, you look what he did to Cejudo in the first round, and what he just did to Dvalishvili like right away. The guy's still scary. So a lot of people, threw shade at us for taking that fight and saying that Rob was, taking biting off more than he could chew. He needed a builder fight, and that's just not his attitude or my attitude. It's like, I know what skill Rob has, and Rob, he wants to fight these toughest guys to prove that he can make a title run. So we had no hesitation in it. We thought we were getting him at the right time. We thought stylistically it was a good fight, but a lot of people didn't necessarily agree with it at the time, and now they're like, all right, well, maybe it was a good move. So yeah, he, kudos to Rob. He went out and performed. A year layoff, coming back and fighting someone like Marlon Moraes, and then dealing with adversity early in the fight like he did. I think it just builds confidence moving forward.
I don't know if he told you about this, but when we spoke before the fight, we were talking about, I made a joke about how, do the UFC think you've got something against Brazil because you've been matched up with 6 Brazilians? And this is Rob's word verbatim. We were talking about he's got 3 wins and 3 losses, and he literally said, maybe we need someone like Aldo to get the belt. And then he gets Aldo next. It was I remember watching it back a couple of days ago in preparation for getting you back on, and I was like, what a strange coincidence that is.
Yes, there's definitely a lot of like serendipitous things that have happened in Rob's career. Just even little things like before the Cejudo fight, when Marlon fought Cejudo and we were about to fight Lineker, and Marlon came up to us at the hotel and he's like, hey, listen, like, this is a good fight for you. You can beat this kid. Like, I'm a fan of you. Like, you have what it takes to beat him. Like, keep up the good work. And then all of a sudden we go and fight Marlon, probably the nicest guy in MMA. And then, we fight him. And then while we were in camp, at on fight week to fight Marlon, we were doing our interview, sitting on the couch in the media room waiting. And Aldo walked by and he was just standing outside the doorway. And like, he kind of looked in, saw Rob, looked away. Aldo's not like a trash talker or anything. He's the nice guy too. And I looked at Rob and I was like, dude, he's like, we're going to fight him soon. And he's like, I know. Like, so it's just like, you have these little like moments where you kind of like, all right, that fight's going to happen at some point. And, you envision it, and then it just happens. So like, it's exciting. I think Rob, he finally got the Brazilian monkey off his back though. I think it was like, he lost to 3 of them, and now he's finally, he went and beat Marlon, and that was a big win. And now we get to get the winning record against the Brazilians when it comes to after we beat Aldo. So that'll be good.
Now, I don't want to labour this point too much, because it's well documented that Rob was offered the interim title fight. So I don't want to labour it too much, because I've seen you speak about it in other interviews. But I just want to ask plainly, how disappointing was that for both Rob and the team more generally?
It was like a big, like we just, you train so many years dreaming of that call, and it's just, when you're a young kid like Patty was, you're dreaming of getting the call to the UFC. And then the next thing is getting that call to fight for a title, and you work so hard for it, and Rob's done everything right. And unfortunately, it was just right on the heels of him having COVID and the whole team being quarantined away from each other. And, it was a good 2.5 week run where we we couldn't have team trainings, and he was, running on a treadmill at home, and we couldn't all be around each other. It was just bad timing, but everything happens for a reason. And, we said thanks, but we're just not in a position where we can safely make it to the fight from a health standpoint. And then 2 days later, it was like, all right, what about Aldo in December? And we're like, let's go, So it was frustrating, but it was also like kind of validating to see, like, all right, we're at that point. Like, we're the number one contender. Obviously Dillashaw got hurt, but like we're right there. So we just know that we go out and beat Aldo, we're in even better spot than we were a couple weeks ago when we had to say no. So frustrating to say the least, but obviously, comforting to know that we're getting those phone calls. So unfortunate, but it is what it is, and everything happens for a reason.
Yeah. I want to talk as well, last question on Rob, but as we mentioned, this is the biggest fight of his career, most high profile name. He's Garbrandt was a big name, Rice was a big name, but Aldo's, I think, a step up. He's a legend. Do you have any worries of Rob perhaps feeling the pressure of the event, feeling the pressure of fighting a legend, or is that's something that you don't see as a problem?
No, I think when Rob was doing these interviews after the Cody fight, they're like, who do you want next? And he was just throwing out those names. He's like, I want to fight one of the legends. I want to fight like an Aldo, a Cruz. Cruz might be a step backwards, but he's like, I want to fight those big names, the TJs. Yeah. Like, he would have rather fought those guys than a Sandhagen, even though I think, Sandhagen's a good fight for us too. But I think he gets excited for that. Him getting the challenge of fighting a legend gets him excited versus like intimidated. And early on in Rob's career, we called him Cool Rob Font because he was just so cool, calm, and collected. And I think he's been a really big role model to other fighters on our team and younger fighters that I manage, or even in the region, of like how to manage those nerves before a fight and how to just be a professional and go out there. And, you got 15 or 25 minutes, and it doesn't matter what you've done the last 15 years. You got to perform in those 15 or 25 minutes. And I think Rob's shown that, his line is, you're going to get those butterflies. It's like, it's your job to teach him how to fly in formation. So I think he's been able to do that. So I don't think this has been a intimidating thing to him at all, And I think if anything, it's more motivating.
Yeah, superb. Well, let's transition to the other fighter of the cartel, Calvin Kattar, who's making his longer-awaited, his very anticipated return after the Max Holloway defeat against Giga Chikadze. It's always a bit of a mouthful, that one, in January. Tyson, I want to ask, once again, I want to be respectful, but I want to ask this question with the nicest intent. But Calvin's coming off a big loss, if you like, against Max. How important was getting the right opponent for Calvin's return? How important was that for you as his manager and coach?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you can try to cherry pick all you want, but when you're sitting there at number 5, you don't have a lot of options. You got to kind of, within reason, you got to fight who they put in front of you. And, they tried to give us the Higa fight in August. Back in May, when we were out there for Cody, they offered us Higa for August. And I think there was some like misleading stories on this. Is we never said no to Higa. I think I saw some interviews where Higa was saying, like, oh, you said no, then you said yes, then disappeared. Like, to set the record straight, is like, there was never a time where we were going to fight Giga back in August. Like, we got the email within 2 minutes. We were like, no, we're not fighting till October at the earliest. Yeah. And then that was it, But so I think maybe Higa's team was saying, oh, he's going to fight you. Oh, now he's not. So I think there was some miscommunication there. We never entertained fighting anybody in August, whether it be Higa or anybody. So then fast forward, we got an offer to headline last weekend's card, and we said yes, and it didn't work out, and against another opponent. And then the offer came to fight Giga in January, and we said yes right away. So there's no hesitation. But I still don't know if the fight's 100% confirmed. It's Instagram official, as Calvin would say, but we don't have a contract or anything. We don't have any feedback from the UFC whether the fight's happening or not. So at this point, we're training to fight Higa in January, but we have no idea if it'll happen. So that's what it is being in the top 5. When you're getting paid top 5 money and you're top 5 in the division and you're pretty close to a title fight, your job is to train and stay ready. And if the fight happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And, there's not much we can do about it. So as far as cherry picking opponents, it's like, you only have so much leeway. Like, no, we won't fight in August, but yes, we will fight in October. All right, here's who it is. And, we really liked the Brandon Allen fight. I thought that was a great fight to come back to. I think, he's a game opponent. I think he's got 8 wins in the UFC, 8-0 in the UFC.
Yeah, who's that? Sorry, did you say Brendan Allen?
Oh, sorry, Arnold Allen. I always say Brandon Allen. Arnold Allen.
I was thinking, whoa, he's taking a couple of weight classes up.
Yeah, I always call him Brandon. Yeah, so Arnold Allen would have been a fun fight, but it didn't. The timelines don't match up. So they brought up Higa, and we're like, all right, like now, we're coming off a loss, we're coming off a year layoff. Like now we got to go earn our top 5 spot again, and then earn another big fight. So I'm not saying that Giga wouldn't be a big fight. And clearly any fight's a big fight, but a fight that's going to push us up in the rankings versus just keep us where we're at. So if we fight Giga in January, that's a fun fight for the fans. Everybody's like, oh, that's a banger. And I'm like, well, I hope it isn't. I hope we just go out there and dismantle them. And that would be the plan. So yeah, if it happens, that'll be a good one. If it doesn't happen, we'll be ready to fight someone else. So
were they the only 2 offers that you've had for Calvin post Max Holloway, Arnold Allen and Giga, or has there been anybody else? Yeah,
there was rumblings early on that supposedly the UFC was thinking about offering Zombie. There was talks about that, but never from the UFC. I heard it from other people that they were talking to Zombie about fighting Calvin, and we were just like, and that was supposedly back in April. We're like, we're not even training, so we were doing our due diligence, taking all the time off and, recovering and stuff like that. So yeah, that was really it. We weren't pushing for a fight, we were being patient and just getting in the gym and sharpening weapons and trying to improve on some stuff. And, this is the first layoff that Calvin's had since he's been in the UFC. Really since he's been in the UFC, he's been in fight camp. Most of these fights he goes into with a banged up nose or a broken hand, or we're nursing something going into the fight just because Calvin just pushes through things. And I think this is the first time that he'll go into a fight, knock on wood, with a healthy everything. So it'll be exciting to see him perform when he's 100%.
You were saying earlier about how you felt like Calvin being in the main event spots helped Rob when he got the call up. Do you think Calvin having this layoff will be helped by what Rob's gone through with the ACL injury last year? Do you think Rob can help him in some of them frustrations of being out of the cage, if you like?
Yeah, I think he got to watch Rob rehab as a professional and see that, like, you got to do what you can with time off. Calvin knew that he wasn't probably going to fight for close to a year, but he was still in the gym. He was still improving. And, Calvin not training for a fight probably still trains more like a professional than a lot of guys that are in the UFC in fight camp. The guys, he's a workhorse. He's a worker. If he's not getting stuff done, like reps on the mats, he feels like he's not working and he's falling behind. And so I think Rob set the tempo for that. I think Calvin would be like that anyway. But I think, Rob laid a good blueprint as an example of how to get better when you're off on an injury and or with time off. And, that's the goal, is when Calvin comes back in January, that you're going to see like different skills, new weapons, and you're going to see, some of the old weapons even sharper.
Yeah. How impressed have you been with Giga in the UFC? He's undefeated. He's coming off a big win over Barboza. If we take away the fact that you're supposedly preparing for him in January, how impressed have you been with his run so far?
I think it's good. I mean, if you look at him on the Contender Series against, I think it was Springer, I mean, he didn't look great, and Springer was and it was hard before that. He hadn't really fought anybody good. I think, if you look at his first, I think it was his first 5 wins in the UFC. I wrote it down somewhere here. I think it was like his first 5 wins in the UFC. He did not fight anybody good. It was like, I don't know, I got it somewhere, but
it started with 2 splits, then 2 unanimous, and then I think the last 2.
Yeah, he's been improving. He's been improving exponentially. So that's the thing you have to think of. Is like, all right, he beat a lot of guys that don't have wins in the UFC. I think I think his first 5 opponents had a combined UFC record of like 5-15. He wasn't beating anybody that was successful in the UFC. And then he got the Cub Swanson fight, but still, it's like, all right, did that one age well? I don't know. Like, we don't know where Cub's at in his career. He's on the back 9, but he's still good. And he caught him early. So he didn't have to deal with any adversity in that fight. He got him out early and got through. And then with Barboza, he showed that, okay, like this guy belongs here, you know, because before then it was like, okay, does he not? And you're not really sure. And that was a really good blue chip win for him against someone like Barboza. But again, you know, watching that fight, I remember thinking like Barboza seemed off, and maybe that's because Giga made him feel off, you know. So you can't put shade at Giga on that. But yeah, I think Barboza didn't look like himself, but who knows? Is that because of Giga? Is that because Barboza had an off night? Who knows? So yeah, it's definitely a challenge fighting someone like Giga. I think he's probably right now from a danger standpoint better than his ranking, but from you know, a beatable standpoint, it's like you look at our body of work in the UFC versus his body of work, and I think we've had stiffer competition, especially early on. You know, we were fighting guys like Andre Philly in our debut, and Andre Philly on any given night could beat anybody. That guy's a beast. So, you know, we're knocking out some legends too, and our losses are against like really good guys. So, makes for an interesting fight. You know, you got the kicker versus the puncher, and USA versus Georgia, I guess is what it's going to be, and you know, it's always fun when those guys come in, and I respect him for being like, you know, so you know, such a good representative of his country. You know, you got him and Marab and a couple others really representing Georgia right now, and they're on the up, so that's exciting. That always makes it more fun for a fight, because you know we're gonna have a whole country cheering against us, and all those DMs are gonna be filled with people telling us we suck, and you know, it makes for fun. But then after those fights, it's always cool after, because then you get to learn a little bit more about their MMA community, and then a lot of those people that hate you leading up to the fight, win, lose, or draw, they end up following Calvin's career after that, and it's all good fun. So, you know, all we can control right now is getting ready to fight him if we fight him, and you know, defending that Giga kick, and and hopefully showing that you know, our hands are better than his feet.
Yeah, I want to talk about something as well, and it's well documented that on the come up there was rumblings around New England of Rob and Calvin potentially fighting, and I'll be honest with you, Tyson, I'm going to ask this plainly. How thankful, looking back, are you that fight never happened? Because they seem great friends, they seem great training partners. How thankful are you that Rob and Calvin didn't fight on the come up?
Yeah, I'm very thankful, because I think they are pivotal in each other's career. You know, there isn't a Rob Font at number 4 without Calvin Kattar. You know, and there isn't a Calvin Kattar at number 5 without a Rob Font. These guys need to go through this grind together, and you know, early on when people were mentioning, oh, Rob, you know, you want to fight Calvin, you know, at the time I wasn't Rob's head coach. I was his manager, one of his assistant coaches, and I was like, absolutely not. I was like, I like Calvin. He's a good kid. I want him to go to the UFC, and you need to go to the UFC. If anything, you'd actually be training together, not knocking each other out. And you know, a couple of people tried to backdoor me and make the fight happen without me knowing it, and I didn't even know it at the time, but Rob, you know, behind my back, when other coaches were trying to get that fight to happen, Rob's like, listen, it's just like, let's let Tyson do his thing. Like, I trust him. And Rob put his belief in me, and the fight never happened, you know, and then now here we are. So I think, you know, everything happens for a reason. I think, you know, fortunately at the time I had this vision of trying to get where we are now, and I had this like roadmap to how I think we could get there. And, you know, guys like Rob and Calvin believed in me, and, you know, luckily it's worked out how it has. And, but yeah, I don't know what the world would look like right now if they had fought each other, because I've been with Rob since the beginning, and Calvin's, you know, obviously, you know, we're close in the MMA, but even like from a personal standpoint, like he is one of my best friends. Like you know, we talk about non-MMA stuff. We talk about family stuff. We talk about, you know, struggles of being a dad and a husband, and you know, him, you know, with family stuff. And so, you know, when you get that close to someone, you can't imagine like not having them in your life. So I think, you know, I think the whole team's really blessed that it never happened. And I think I'm very like, we're all fortunate that it didn't happen.
Yeah. Now I want to finish up just very quickly about talking about some of the other guys under Top Game, and some of the guys that you work with. Now, there's a lot of ways I could go here. We could go Will Knight, we could go Invicta champ Emily Ducote, we could go technically one of the understudies of the cartel, Tom Pags. You talk to me about how things are with your fighters, non-cartel related, if you like.
I think we're in a good spot. I think you look at Emily Ducote, and I think I don't think there's a scenario you can paint that she's not a top 10 UFC fighter right now. I think Tapology is obviously, they lean towards giving anybody in the UFC higher record, higher ranks than non-UFC fighters. But I think if you match her up against the top 10 UFC fighters, and she's right there. I think everybody knows that. I think it's only a matter of time before she gets pulled in. We're just dealing with some stuff on the back end to make that happen. And I think you're going to see Emily in the UFC real soon, getting knockouts. There's not a lot of 115 pounders that are getting single punch knockouts. Yeah. And she's got 2 in her last 3 fights, and they weren't against turds, they were against like high level fighters. She just knocked out a girl who's 11-5 and had a bunch of UFC fights, and 2 fights before that, she knocked out another girl in the first, I think it was the first round. So that's rare. You look at Rose is probably, the best 115, obviously the best at that division. And she's got that knockout power, and that's one of the things that makes her so exciting, is that she's this small, the small female fighter that can also knock people out. That makes her kind of an enigma. And I think Emily's got that too. And that's not something you can necessarily even teach. It's like, you have that type of power or you don't. And she's got really good coaching with Coach Giuliano, guiding her through her career. And I think he's done something special with her, which is amazing because they're actually engaged. So when you have those coach fighter relationship and they're in a relationship, sometimes that could be interesting, but they seem to figure it out. And he's doing something special with her, and she's listening. So I'm excited about what could be really, really, really bright future for her in the UFC once we figure out all the logistics of it. And then you got obviously William Knight. He's getting a lot of fanfare now just for being the freak that he is. He's just unorthodox. He does things that normal people can't do, like going backwards with your chin up and just swinging and knocking someone out, and those things that he does, and people flatten him out when he's belly down, and him just standing up and pulling him off. He's just a once a generation type athlete, a physical specimen that you can't teach any of the stuff that he has. There's a lot going around that, people talking about how he's on steroids and this and that. It's like, I get why they say it, it's almost a compliment because he's just such a beast. But his dad's like 60 years old and still benches over 600 pounds. He's just a physical specimen. The guy can go bench press 225 over 40 reps, which is great. I think only 19 people have ever done that in the NFL. And he's able to do it when he's a little heavier. And, then he'll go into a backflip after knocking a guy out. So it's like, all right, like he's just, I think he's one of those guys.
He's got something that we haven't, basically. He's got something that the average person hasn't.
Yeah. And I think people love tuning in for that. They want to see like, all right, this guy, he's just something exciting is going to happen. It's almost, and I'm not going to compare it to this, but it's sort of like when Deion Sanders used to, you're not a football guy, but when Deion Sanders used to play football, it was like or Michael Vick, you wanted to watch him play because he's going to do something amazing. Yeah. And I think William Knight has a little bit of that in him. It's like, all right, what's this freak going to do this fight? And he's got a personality on him too. When he talks, he kind of sounds like Mike Tyson. He's just a little bit of a, he's a showman too. So yeah, I'm excited about his future. And obviously, Tom Pags got we're still working on an opponent, but he's supposed to be fighting in 2 weeks here. We had an issue with the opponent, so we're working on that. But yeah, he's looking to go to 3-0 as a pro, and we'll be using him a lot for the if we get the Giga fight. He's 6 feet, 74-inch reach, so he'll be perfect training partner for Calvin to drill with. It'd be good, getting these young guys with bright futures, and they're all looking up to guys like Rob and Calvin, and trying to get where they're at, but they're also helping push Rob and Calvin past where they're at. So there's a lot of synergy. It's very symbiotic, and I'm excited about the future of all of them. But even my boy Mitch, even though he lost to your boy a couple weeks ago or last week, that was a tough one. Mitch looked really good in the first round against Jake, and Jake had a jiu-jitsu advantage, and Mitch made one mistake and he took advantage of it. So kudos to Jake. I hope he has a bright future in the UFC, because that only makes things look better for Mitch.
Yeah, Mitch will get there. Mitch. The other thing is as well, I don't know how much you knew about Hadley prior to getting the fight signs and all of that, but Hadley's been a very, very highly touted prospect over here for a long time. Cage Warriors champ, EFC champ. He's been someone who's as you say, I don't think it'll look like a bad loss on Mitch's record in years to come.
Yeah, and we got the fight. Some of my friends in media were like, dude, this is literally the best 125er not in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like, he should have already been signed. And I was like, yeah, but I don't think you realize how good Mitch is. They're like, well, I guess we'll see. And then after the fight, they were like, all right, like, I think Mitch is a lot better than I realized, you know? So I think Mitch's stock probably just goes up in that fight. But, you know, they say you got to learn from your losses. And I think Mitch will. You know, he went in there, won the first round, looked really good.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you make one mistake against a guy that good and it'll cost you. So now Mitch will double down. He'll get back in the gym. And I think, you know, he goes back and gets 1-2 wins locally. I think he's either back on the Contender Series or scoop up by the UFC before that. So, you know, the future's still bright. He just turned 23 yesterday, I believe. So he's still a young prospect. He's got a really bright future.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I very much enjoyed catching up with you today. And as I said this to Rob last time when we spoke in May. I am always very thankful for the time that all four of you and your fighters more generally have given me. So thanks as always.
I appreciate it, man. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Before we finish, Tyson, how can people find you on social media?
On Instagram, it's Tyson_Chartier. We also have the England Cartel, any Cartel MMA on Instagram. And you want any Cartel swag, we got that in the link in my bio on Instagram. So yeah, just follow us. Keep up to date with what all the Cartel guys are doing. And you know, unless we're fighting an Englishman, we appreciate the support over there. And we're New England. You guys are Old England, so we're still a team. We just don't root for us when we're fighting the English guys. But other than that, like we're your USA based team.
Truthfully, Tyson, if the truth be told, there'd be very few Englishmen who I would support if they were fighting Robert Calvin. I've actually spoke to Arnold Allen a couple of times. He's a great guy. He'd be the only one where it would be hard for me to watch, if you like, going, who do I want to win? But truthfully, there would be very few Englishmen who if Rob and Calvin were matched up with, I would want the Englishman to win. So
I like it.